Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I like. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Castle as well as the latest episode of Blindspot. Now, this week's episode of Castle I really liked because this week's victim, his name is Alan, he's a safety inspector, is an immortal. Literally killed, I'll knock it out for you, 3 times in this episode. First time by being poisoned, second time being electrocuted, and the third time with a bullet being shot directly in the head. It was so amazing because I love the fact that Castle is just like, okay, this guy is something special. Just because it's like after he died the second time and came back, Castle's like, it's official, he's immortal. And I love the fact is that because Castle's so adamant about it, even Alan started thinking like, yeah, he actually started buying into it because Castle's like, oh, you're a superhero. And I love Javier was like, SPZ was like, yo, how about safety man? And he's like, no. And then Alan's like, Captain Cool? And he's just like, oh. He's like, oh, I'm Rogaine man. And he's like, no. I mean, keep trying. I love all the stupid names, and I love the fact that they meet that mob boss kind of later on in the episode, and he's kind of, yeah, he's your nemesis. And he was on his date with Gwen, and that kind of just ruined everything. He's like, she's like, you're up here thinking you're a superhero, and he's your arch nemesis. And who is this talking about Castle? It's like, oh, what is he, your sidekick? Castle's like, sidekick? No. Obviously, I'm his mentor. I'm just like, oh, I love it. But I love also the fact this poor Lainey, because that doctor kept treating Lainey like she was terrible at her job. Like, she's like, he was dead. I was sure, but he was dead both times. And she's like, okay, Lainey. It's so sad because Lainey was kind of feeling bad because it's like, eventually she was kind of like, okay, either I'm really bad at my job or Castle is right and this guy is immortal. And Becca's like, no, he's not immortal, and no, you're not bad at your job. You're smart. It's like, I felt so bad for Lainey just because of that. But I did really like the fact is that, he ended up really... This is actually our first episode. Is this the first episode that it's never actually been murder in it? There's been attempted murder, but I think this is the first episode that's never actually had an episode that didn't have a victim. I thought that's kind of interesting when you actually break it down like that. You end up finding out that basically he was about to be killed. The reason why someone was attempting to kill him is because as a safety inspector, he was going to look into it. But essentially the mob and the triad were working together to make this synthetic heroin out of a certain chemical that as an inspector he had come across before. And they would have figured, he would have figured it out. So that's why he was going to be killed. And it ends up being the person who did it was Gwen. It's like, oh, he really liked her and everything too. And he was just like, oh, she pulled a gun out on him. It's like, oh. So there's not going to be a second date, is there? She's like, no. She's like, oh, you actually thought a guy like you had a chance with me. And he's like, oh. He's like, and I thought dying twice would hurt. I thought dying twice hurt, but it's like, that hurt even more. It's like, oh. Poor Alan, because Castle's the one that kind of convinced him to start dating her, because he's like, oh, you kind of live this boring life. You need to step out there, put yourself out there, and go after this girl, because he even asked her out on a date. I thought it was kind of it did come pop in the back of my mind. I was like, out of anyone, I was like, it's probably her, isn't it? Because that's going to be the twist. It's the girl he likes is actually the one that's been trying to kill him. It's sad. And I love the fact that, like I said, she tried to kill him the 3rd time, and it's just like, oh. Castle's like, I'm so sorry. I ended up making him think he was immortal. And Ryan's there trying to be like, no, it's okay, Castle. We all kind of believed it too. And then he ends up getting up and handing Castle a tissue. He's like, thank you. And he's like, ah! He's there with a freaking bullet wound in his head and he's bleeding a little bit. He's like, what's wrong? And they're just like, you're alive. And I love Gwen. Well, it was either she said like, why won't you die, or what will it take for you to die? It's just like she shot him point blank, and it's like, what the hell are you, dude? And even the doctor was like, she couldn't explain it. Essentially, the bullet went into his head, but it didn't pierce his skull, so that's why he survived. It's just like, this guy is essentially either the luckiest person in the world, or he really is immortal, and I really like that. And it seems like a little bit of a thing between him and Lainey are hooking up. Because they had that moment in the episode where they finished, like, kind of how that Castle and Beckett thing works, where they kind of have the same thought and they say it at the same time. And I love the fact that Beckett was kind of like Lainey and him had that moment. And then Beckett was just like, oh my God, is that what Is that what we sound like? And Castle's like, I hope not. I mean, it's cute and everything, but it's too much. It's just like, oh, don't hate, appreciate. You guys are just as cute when you do it as they are cute when they were doing it. I was like, oh, that's so adorable that they're doing the Castle and Beckett thing. And it seems like there might be a possible him and Lainey thing. So that'd be kind of neat. It'd be kind of cool if we get to see that character again. I really like this character because I really like his personality. I love that Castle tried so hard to make him a superhero. Another side to this episode, though, is, Castle brings up the fact is he wants some kind of like, what are they going to do after Locke set? The fact is, can they live a normal life? I love the fact is Beckett's like, oh, don't worry, Castle, you'll never be normal. Because it's like, well, what do we do? He wants to change things up. He's like, oh, we could go to Paris. The world is out there. She's like, we need to change things up because it's like, once Locke set is dealt with, like, what will we do? And, everything did kind of get Beckett thinking, but she ends up talking to, what's that guy named Caleb? Now, I'm going to admit, I don't remember who it is, some of the characters that were presented in this episode, because I ended up forgetting because I have terrible, terrible short-term memory. But essentially, Caleb is a lawyer who works for, who his client works for Lockset. So essentially, Caleb worked for Lockset. And Beckett kind of brings it up. It's like, you were actually a good guy. Why don't you, help us track down Lockset? Essentially, he's like, back down, Beckett. My client knows that you're looking into him, meaning you're looking into Lockset. And if this goes up any further in the food chain, you will die. He's like, essentially, it takes about 7 minutes for the neurons in your brain, for your brain to kind of shut down after you die. So in that 7 minutes, that's when your life flashes before your eyes. It's like, I hope that you don't flash to this moment, when you die, when Lockset tracks you down, that you don't end up flashing to this moment and, how you ruined your one chance to just kind of walk away from this and forget about it. Because Vikram had, tracked him down because he had used the information Castle had gathered. Castle remembered about, Lockset being in LA and tracked him down. Essentially, I love the fact that Castle was on edge. It's like, the fact is that, Caleb could easily go to Lockset and tell him about what's happening. But like, Beckett's like, no, not, helping us is a better interest than, helping, Lockset. This is in his best interest. And, the time came for, Caleb to kind of, because she had given him a deadline, but he didn't meet it, so she was like, okay, I guess you're right. He's in the win because Vikram can't even track him down anymore, so it's just like, I guess we lost track of him, but it's okay, we'll kind of find another lead. But they end up going back home, finding him in their apartment. He ends up giving Beckett a phone. It's the phone that, essentially it was a phone left on his doorstep saying, you work for me now. So that's the phone Lockset calls him on. Lockset gives him his missions like every Thursdays at a specific time. He's on the phone for like 60 seconds. So basically use that time to try and track him. And Caleb's like, I'm going to go and try and pretend like things are the same. But Beckett's like, it's not the same. It's like, to me, we're going to end up finding out. I don't know if it's going to be next episode, but eventually we're going to find out that Caleb's dead because Caleb ends up, it ends up turning out that, Lockset found out about Caleb's betrayal, but he's like, I'm going to go to work. I'm going to go home and just pretend like everything is okay. And it's like they're one step closer to tracking down and taking down Lockset, which, it's simply in the back of my mind. I'm like, but what if this whole thing's a trap? What if Caleb's sent there specifically to lead you into a trap? So Lockset puts you in a position where he can take you out. Granted, I was like, nah, I feel like if he really wanted to take them out, if he knew that Beckett was looking into him again, I feel like he would have taken her out immediately. I am curious to see who Lockset is. It'd be kind of interesting to see if Lockset is actually, I get the feeling Lockset is going to be someone like, oh, they meet him ahead of time. They just don't realize it's him. He kind of plays the background. I always love it when villains do that. They end up, they end up being someone mild-mannered. They end up being someone that, they're definitely not a bad guy. And it turns out, this bad guy is actually, this person that we thought was a good guy is actually a bad guy the entire time. We thought they were just some mild-mannered loser, and it turns out that they're some evil mastermind genius. That's what I like. Just kind of like, what was his name? The Triple K Killer. When he actually started off as like pretending to be, 3K's cellmate or something when he ended up being 3K himself. That type of situation. And kind of at the very end of the episode, it twists and he reveals himself to be, the killer. And it's like, I expect something like that with Lockset. Maybe that's not how it's going to be. But I get the feeling, what if Caleb did set them up? Like, what if this is some elaborate plan to put Beckett and Castle in? You know, I feel like normally he'd probably just go ahead and take them out now, would probably send a hit squad. But it's like, I don't know. You know, maybe he wouldn't do something so outrageous. Maybe he, you know, hide it a little bit, you know, make it a little discreet. But can't wait to see where that storyline goes. I didn't see what next week's episode is really about because, you know, like I said, I always try to avoid previews. So be kind of interesting to see where that goes and see what next week's case is about. Now moving on to this week's episode of Blindspot, where we have a very interesting thing. We have Tasha actually figuring out a tattoo. It essentially there's a certain set of numbers on Jane's, one of Jane's tattoos. It essentially lines up with a specific football program, a sports program. Particularly, there was one specific player it's tied to, and they go there to investigate and end up. They're about to leave when basically a shooter's on campus, and it turns into a big situation. That's what it kind of hits you hits you a little bit in your heart, because it's like, this situation, because any of the situations in the show, you know, could be real in their own way, but it's like countless situations like that have happened, you know, where like someone in a school takes a gun and ends up shooting a lot of people. It was a little too real, so it kind of got me on that level. But it was a very interestingly done episode, because, you know, we have the team there infiltrating. Obviously, they're in the school trying to handle it. But basically, you get like 4 different perspectives of what went down in this episode. You get like okay, once the group kind of separates, you see what everyone went through, as well as prior to seeing what they did, you saw what they did at the beginning of the day before they got called into work today. Tasha went to like a meeting, you know, for gamblers, kind of like AA, but for gamblers. Initially, she didn't talk. She kind of just like, no, I don't want to talk. And it just seems like she's kind of brushing her gambling thing aside, not really opening up about it. You have Kurt with his dad. Like, essentially, his dad is like, you don't owe me anything. You're doing all this because you think like, oh, like because of all the time you spent thinking I killed Taylor. He's like, it's okay. Literally the entire town thought I did it. You were a little boy. He's like, I don't blame you. He's like, I forgive you, son. You know, we're trying to make up for this time we have, you know, all the time we missed, but it's like, we're here now, we're together. And it's like, I forgive you. And it's just like, dude, it breaks your heart, dude. It's like, you know, cause you know, Taylor was a really important friend to him, and it's just like everyone in town was saying his dad did it, so you know, instinctually Kurt was so sure he did it too. And it's just, I don't know, it just breaks your heart, dude, just seeing that. It's just like all that time spent thinking his dad was a bad guy, and it took all this time for him to finally, you know, reconcile with his dad, because he knows his dad didn't have anything to do with Taylor disappearing, and his dad just there. Like I was scared, because I was halfway expecting his dad to die in that moment. I was like, that's the crappy thing, to go into work with that on your shoulder. But it didn't seem like that with Weller earlier in the episode. It's like, okay, so his dad didn't die. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of sweet that to me, it kind of scared me, because I was like, wait, are we setting this up because we're about to kill off one of these characters? And this is kind of to show you like, oh, it could kind of be anyone type of thing. I don't know. That's what I was kind of thinking. Cause like, if they were going to do that, I was like, it definitely couldn't be Tasha, because like, you know, she's being used by that, guy to kind of keep track of Mayfair. And speaking of Mayfair, we ended up finding out, you know, why her SO is back. Essentially, her SO faked her death because she wanted a new start. And it's like, Mayfair's like, do you know what you did to me? I thought you were dead. And like, how dare you do that to me? You faked your own death and everything. And then she ended up saying, like, essentially, you know, talks about the fact that it's her and Tom. And Mayfair informs her, like, Tom's dead. She's like, yeah, if someone knows about Daylight, you know, the program. I could never remember its name, but a program where they spied on all those people, and she just couldn't, you know, live with what she did. So that's why she, quote unquote, killed herself. She faked her death so she can get away. But so she found out that someone who knows about Daylight tracked her down. Makes you wonder, is it the organization that Jane is working for, or is it another group? But, yeah, essentially what ended up happening is Mayfair does gather money for her, because essentially she came to Mayfair because she needs money to run again. And Mayfair's like, either you stay and let me protect you, or you take this money and you leave, because Mayfair, her significant other is like, you know, come with me. Everything will be okay. Just come with me. We can just run away together and start over. She's like, I loved you and I still love you, but I can never forgive you for what you did. All the crap she put her through. So she takes the money and leave. And this is kind of, I mean, granted, Mayfair's got a quote unquote new girl in her life, but it's like, I still say I don't trust her. I don't trust her. It's just a little too coincidental that she ended up popping into Mayfair's life when she did. Oh yeah, the point I was going to make before, the fact is Tasha, it couldn't be Tasha because, you know, that guy wants her to keep an eye on Mayfair. And I was like, it could be Reed. I was like, personally, I was like, I don't think they're going to kill off a character this soon. You know, it hasn't been that long since they killed David. You know, that was kind of like the twist there because it's like, oh, which character is going to die in this episode? And it turned out being, you know, because that's what the previews for that episode were going, like, kind of aiming for. But it was like, oh yeah, it turns out to be David. So I don't think they're going to be so quick to kill off another character. Maybe, maybe not. And then, you know, we had Jane and Oscar, because Oscar's like, yo, we need to change. You need a new handler. And Jane's like, no, I don't need a new handler. I need you. It's like, basically she gets called into work. I mean, it super upsets her because it's like, you're a coward, you know, you drag me in here. You make me feel for you, get these feelings for you, kind of remember the fact is of kind of bring up the feelings I already apparently had for you. And I'm feeling them strongly. You sleep with me. And now when things get too serious, you want to run away. You're a coward. Just wait till I get back, you know, after work. And then we'll talk about this. And then we also had Reed basically wearing a suit and everything, and his tailor's kind of like, recent breakup? He's like, no, it's nothing like that. He's like, you gain a little weight, you're not working out as much. Essentially, he was telling Reed, like, you know, make a change. You know, gave him that weird bow tie he was wearing this episode, which it looks weird. I kind of like overlooked it, but seeing it throughout the episode, it's just like, you can't help but think about the fact is that that's weird. But, yeah, man. But basically, it was essentially he wanted to change things up. And I really like, you know, like I said, I really like the way the episode's divided the way it is. You kind of see different perspectives, how things affect certain things. Like, for instance, the fact is Kurt was going to disarm the bomb, but other students came up behind him, so he didn't get a chance to. He had to lead them away. Reed ended up opening that door. Well, not opening it, but turning the handle, and it ends up not setting off the bomb because it's connected to a grenade. And when it's about to go off, he ends up getting there was like, basically, he's like, okay, guys, stay calm, because there was a whole bunch of students that he had brought with him. But he turns around, they're all running for their lives. He's like, okay. It was like, that was expected. But the one that stayed by his side was Valerie. And that was like, that's pretty sweet of you, Valerie, because he was there for her, you know, and her, it was her boyfriend, either a good friend of hers, Nick, or her boyfriend. He died protecting her. And basically, he used her earring. He stuck it in to kind of act for the missing pin for the grenade, so it gave him a little bit of time, a little leeway of running away. So that was pretty neat. But at the same time he was doing that, something went out the window and it crashed down. And Reed's like, "What is that?" And Valerie's like, "It's a refrigerator." That was from earlier when that was from Kurt smashing open the window. And that's what that was. So I did like the kind of connections, because it's like Tasha was pinned down and we had Jane, who was confronted by that cop. I was like, oh, that situation's about to turn ugly. But it went a lot better than I thought it would. And they ended up, you know, she and Jane ended up showing up and saving Tasha, helping her out with the guy she was dealing with. And Reed ends up getting held up at gunpoint by a football player that is the reason why they are here in the first place. It's sad when you end up finding out the truth. The reason why they're going to killing spree, they didn't mean to hurt anyone. The people just got in the way. The person they were after was specifically the coach, as well as the head of the school too. Because apparently what happened is the guy's freaking pedophile. The whole because this guy is actually someone Reed knows. Like he was Reed's coach. He drove him home all the time and stuff like that. And it turns out Jerk's a pedophile. Essentially, they wanted the truth to come out about this, because that football player that brought them to this, the tattoo led them to, he thought he was the only one, but he ended up finding out that there was others. The other guy that's with them, I think his name's Tim, he ended up finding out that Tim is also a victim of them too. So the guy's a pedophile. The whole program was him molesting children. And the principal, Because I knew she was suspicious, because the fact is, the moment the FBI got there, she shut them down quickly. Like, oh, are you here in any official capacity? And it's like, okay, coach, come with us. And it's not just her. There's a whole bunch of people who donate, who give money to the school, who essentially paid to protect them. The whole program's money fund, the funds for that whole program were spent as hush money to all the people he molested. And it's like, it's disgusting, and it pisses Reed off the most, because it's like, for one, he wasn't able to save that kid, because he's like, yo, please, I'm trying to help you, don't do this. He's like, you know, we can work together. He's like, it's too late, I'm already, it's like, you're going to end up dead. He's like, I'm already dead. And, you know, Kurt has to put him down so he doesn't hurt Reed. But it's like, Reed is really pissed about it. He's like, we're going to find the evidence to prove that you are the monster you are, and we're going to take you down. And it's like, this guy was very important to Reed, because he was like a mentor to Reed. And fortunately for Reed, nothing ever happened between them, but Reed's just disgusted. He's like, I admired this guy. He ends up being this monster. And Kurt's there to kind of comfort him. He's like, don't give me that speech. But I love what Kurt said. He's like, what I was going to say is this alcohol is very expensive, so you better drink it. And they kind of laugh, and they drink. Because, you know, the fact is, we had Reed and, you know, Kurt. They've kind of been a little bit at odds lately, a little bit. But now they're kind of getting back to a good point. But we also had Tasha, you know, finally opening up, kind of telling us, explaining, you know, at her meeting why she kind of gambles. Back when she was just a regular cop at a precinct, before she was in the FBI, she had a partner. They were doing some kind of bust, and her partner ended up getting killed by this guy. He shot her partner, and it killed her partner, and then killed himself. And to her, that was just like such a random thing. But, you know, that's kind of why she likes gambling so much, because it's the one thing in life she controls. Whether she wins or loses, it's still something that's in her, like, under her control. A situation like that, it was out of her control. So gambling is her vice. It's her way of dealing with that. It's like it's a way of keeping at least some shape or form of control in her life. That's why she latches onto it so much. It's like, oh, it kind of makes you a little sadder, because you're like, okay, now I understand a little bit better why she holds on to gambling so much. Because like I said it before, like, gambling is the reason why she's in the situation she's in, the whole situation with Tom, as well as that new guy that's using her to look into Mayfair. You know, it's because of her gambling problem. But it's like, with a situation like that, I can kind of understand. Jane and Oscar, you know, Oscar still waited for her. And it turned out, she was like, you know, her almost dying today kind of put things in perspective for her. She's like, Oscar, she can't have anyone else with Oscar other than Oscar be by her side, because Oscar knows her so well, and that's the only way she knows herself. Because without him, she kind of feels hollow. He makes her whole, because he knows her so well. She feels like the next handler won't be like that. They won't look at Jane like that. They'll just treat it like a mission. It's like, you know, you see me for me, and that makes the world a difference. So it was kind of sweet. But, you know, we even had Oscar's partner at the end of the episode like, you're getting too emotionally invested in this. He's like, just let's get this done. And he unzips a body bag. I was wondering, I was like, oh, who's in the body bag? Is this connected to the kid that died in this episode? You know, the one that had Reed at gunpoint? It's like, no, it's Tom's body. It's like, what are you doing with Tom's body? It's like, we did see you kill him, but what do you plan on doing with it? I mean, there's no telling what he's going to do with it. So it's like, I am very highly curious to see, you know, what that whole thing is. That something we're going to see next episode even, or is that something that's going to like domino effect and end up not coming into effect until later? I don't know. It's like, I can't even imagine what the whole purpose of that is. Hopefully we'll find out pretty soon. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.